Do it, motherfucker. Do it.
What's up? I'm Clary. So I was going to have a live talk with somebody today, and I thought it was Tuesday. I fucking missed today. And yeah, dude, I've been fucking up left and right the past couple days. I need to get myself together a little bit, but anyways, I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing. And today I wanted to use this infographic show video that was posted. It was uploaded like 5 years ago. It's an old video. Atheist versus agnostic. How do they compare and what's the difference? Yeah, I wanted to use this video to talk about religion a little bit, my thoughts on religion. So I'm an agnostic. I've been an agnostic since I was 16. So quite a few years. And I haven't heard any arguments to really shift me. There was one guy I talked to online that did kind of have me, he made me kind of recontextualize how I think about religion overall. That was interesting, but he's like the only one that's really been able to shift me at all. I wanted to see, conversation-wise, like in the comments section, if anyone could maybe like change my mind on any of that. But so I have kind of a weird outlook on religion nowadays. So logically, I am purely agnostic. I don't think there's any logical way to prove or disprove the existence of God or the afterlife. I know proving a negative and all that, just blah, 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 is still like if you put the claim forward. But anyways, emotionally though, I've had a rough past 5 years, and I understand when you're going through a hard time, your brain kind of does that, right? It pushes you towards thinking there's a bigger meaning to all of it, to the suffering. You want to be able to explain it. But it's just, I can't escape the feeling. It just emotionally, I can't escape the feeling that there is some sort of like guiding force to my life, I guess, or maybe a God or something. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's still kind of like a new thing for me. But yeah, so emotionally speaking, it's hard for me to shake it. Logically, though, I am purely 100% an agnostic. But anyways, yeah, I wanted to use this video to talk about it some more, so let's talk about it some more.
Some of us believe in gods, some in reincarnation, and some are unsure, or believe it's the end of the road once we find ourselves 6 feet under. No one really knows for sure, but the quest to understand the truth and whether there is life after death has been a goal of humanity far before the first history books were written.
So he said that like no one really knows, and that I would agree with that, but a lot of people disagree. Yeah, I don't think we can tell. There's just no evidence for it. But of course, what is it? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, or whatever that saying is. Anyways.
How are some of our belief and non-belief systems alike? That's what we'll be attempting to find out in today's episode of the Infographic Show, Atheist versus Agnostic. How do they compare, and what's the difference? Atheism is, in a broad sense, the unbelief in God, or the belief that there is no God.
And of course, there's some variation to that. I have talked to atheists that just straight up claim there is no God, there's no afterlife, there's nothing. They act like they know this for a fact, which is, I think, ridiculous. But a lot of atheists are, what was it, Richard Dawkins, who came up with maybe he didn't come up with it, but I heard it from him, teapot atheism, or teapot agnosticism, one or the other. There could be a teapot orbiting Mars right now. Like right now, as we speak, there could be a teapot just floating around Mars. Is it likely? No, not at all. But there's still a chance because, you never know. It's kind of hard to prove or disprove, right? So essentially what he's saying with that is, yes, there is a chance that there is a God, but the likelihood of it is just so small. It's we might as well just say there's not a God. And I would say I am really sympathetic to that. That's almost like where I stand with it, almost.
Many atheists argue that it's a label that shouldn't really exist at all, as we don't create names for other non-belief systems.
And that is an interesting idea. Yeah, I think of it more as like a pushback against religion overall. Yeah.
For example, there's no word to describe someone who doesn't believe in astrology. If there were, we would probably call them non-astrologers. But in recent years, the atheist movement has become a lot larger, with many outspoken famous atheists, such as scientist and author Richard Dawkins or comedian Ricky Gervais. The two main divisions within atheism are often called Gnostic atheism and agnostic theism. Those in the first group state that they definitely know there is no God.
And once again, I think that's ridiculous. I think it takes just as much faith to believe there is no God, like to not to believe, to claim that for a fact there is no God or afterlife. It takes just as much faith to say that as it does to say that there is a God and there is an afterlife. You can't show either one.
Prove it. The second group are people who say that they can't prove it with certainty, but there's most likely no God.
And that's more my camp, yeah.
His book, The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins suggests a spectrum of 7 levels of beliefs, from those who believe in God to those who do not. The 7 categories that Dawkins popularized are: 1. Strong theist, which is someone with 100% probability of God being real. In the words of C.G. Jung, I do not believe, I know. 2. De facto theist, a very high probability but short of 100%. I don't know for certain, but I strongly believe in God and live.
And all of these, throughout the spectrum, the ends are really where I have a problem. People that make very strong, truth claims, like there is a God. That is a truth of the world, or the opposite of that. There is no God. That is a truth of the world.
My life on the assumption that he is there. 3. Leaning towards theism. So higher than 50%, but not very high. I'm very uncertain, but I'm inclined to believe in God. 4. Completely impartial. Spot on 50%. God's existence and non-existence could be both possible.
So that's like, if I had to choose between teapot agnosticism and that middle ground, that impartial one, I would probably fall more in the impartial camp. But the teapot stuff does, that argument does pull me a little bit more towards there not being a God.
5. Leaning towards atheism, which is lower than 50% but not very much lower. I do not know whether God exists, but I'm inclined to be skeptical. 6. De facto atheist, a very low probability but short of 0. I do not know for certain, but I think God is very improbable.
Once again,
and I live my
I
life
agree
on
with
the
that.
assumption that he's
More
not
or
there.
less.
7. Strong atheist, which is a person who would state, I know there is no God,
But the thing is, you just can't know that. You actually don't know that.
with the same conviction as Jung knows there is one. It's commonly believed that an atheist would not waver from their belief and hold an extremist view, but actually many atheists do encourage open dialogue and debate between different viewpoints. So what about someone who is agnostic? The word agnostic is derived from the Greek word gnosis, which means to know, and the a, which is used to state the opposite. So literally translated, the word means not knowing. Thomas Henry Huxley, an English biologist who lived in the 1800s, first introduced the word in 1876 during a meeting of Britain's Metaphysical Society. Huxley's definition was as follows: agnosticism is the essence of science. Whether ancient or modern, it simply means a man shall not say he knows or believes that which he has no scientific grounds for professing to know or believe.
Beautiful way to put it. That's exactly it. That is exactly it.
The word agnostic describes a person who neither believes nor disbelieves in the existence of God. They follow the belief that one can never know the world beyond sense and experience. In other words, the real world that we live in day to day. People who are agnostic are often criticized for not being willing to make a choice one way or the other. But
See, I hate that. Oh, by the way, I used to help out in this church. It was like a church slash grade school thing set up going on. And one day, I was pretty bored. It was between the thing we were doing, I had some downtime, and I started reading this book about all religions of the world. And when I got to agnostic, they said, oh, they're just indecisive. They don't know whether or not to embrace God. And I'm like, what do you mean? That's not it at all. It's just we don't claim to know one way or the other because there is not enough. Well, there's no proof for one thing or the other. Once again, you can bring up the whole proving a negative thing, how that's bullshitty. Still, if you make a claim, the burden of proof is on you. You have to be able to prove it if you're saying this is a truth about the world. Also, once again, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just keep that in mind.
this may be more misunderstood criticism, as really many agnostics take a firm stand on the view that we do not yet have sufficient knowledge and understanding beyond the physical realm, and therefore cannot make any definite assumptions about the existence of God. That's a little on what it means to be atheist versus agnostic. Now let's do a head-to-head comparison on the key differences. 1. An atheist does not believe in any God, whereas someone who is agnostic does not claim to know whether any God does or doesn't exist. 2. An atheist would often state that the lack of proof for God is enough proof that God does not exist, versus an agnostic who does not determine the existence or non-existence of God through proof, instead only states that we cannot know and therefore God can or cannot exist. 3. The two can be classified differently. Atheism is a lack of belief. Agnosticism is a theory of knowledge that supports different belief systems. 4. The approach to each one also differs, where being an atheist is based on what a person does or doesn't believe, but being agnostic cares about what is possible to prove as a living person. 5. Being atheist is often associated with strong convictions that will only change after proof from other views, whereas being agnostic is more about looking at all possibilities and what cannot be known. 6. Atheism claims that we as people are here now without a greater purpose, and after death, there is nothing.
Okay, so when it comes to there being no afterlife, the argument is essentially, if all you are is your brain, and your brain dies, then you die with it, right? There's nothing of you left there. Now, what happened there is people took logical stepping stones to a logical conclusion. It does seem to make sense. Now, let me draw you back to ye olden times with, like the era of Aristotle and Plato. Back then, people seemed to think that there were only 4 elements plus ether. I mean, technically 5 elements, right? And they took logical stepping stones to a seemingly logical conclusion, but they were dead fucking wrong. Now, of course, that boils down to their lack of knowledge and the lack of tools to help them gather that knowledge. But you could easily compare that to where we're at today. There are obviously many things we don't know about the world, and there could be other factors that would influence that outcome of whether or not you truly, fully die when your brain dies. Just remember that. We do not know everything. Inserting a little bit of doubt into those claims is very important. Once again, both the 5 elements people and the there's no afterlife people took logical stepping stones to a logical conclusion. The 5 elements people were dead fucking wrong, and there's always a chance that the no afterlife people are also dead fucking wrong.
Gnosticism follows the same view as with the existence of God, but that it might be possible for life after death, though it's just as unlikely. 7. Because of these opposing views, atheists will often criticize agnostics for not taking a firm stand. Likewise, an agnostic might criticize an atheist for being too extreme in their view. 8.
Yeah, I definitely, it's not like a firm stand. It's just like, how can you take a firm stand on something when there's no evidence to suggest anything there, right?
It must be said that an agnostic can be an atheist, but an atheist cannot be an agnostic. Since being atheist by definition means denying the possibility that a God can exist, but being agnostic, no God is a possibility. But we may also simply not know what's beyond our physical world. One of the other big differences between atheists and agnostics is we don't tend to recognize people for being agnostic, but we definitely do for being atheist. We took a look at a few of the most famous atheists and what they believed. We found many of the outspoken atheists are actors. Here's what a few had to say. Daniel Radcliffe, who's best known for playing in the Harry Potter films, said though he doesn't preach atheism, he is a militant atheist when religion starts impacting legislation.
And of course, I would agree with that. I think it's good to have more secular society, or secular foundations to our society.
Morgan Freeman said that it all comes down to a matter of believing, especially if people who believe in God don't think the world is more than 6,000 years old.
But yeah, no, he's right. At the end of the day, it's all about belief. Yeah. And there's no truth. We have there are no truth statements to really make about all this, except that there's no evidence. I think that's pretty much the only truth statement you can make.
Brad Pitt was quoted by MSN as saying, "I'm 20% atheist and 80% agnostic."
See, I like that. Oh God, I waver. I might actually be a solid 50-50. I'm not going to lie. Or no, I don't know. I'll think about it more.
Another famous person where there seems to be some debate in whether he was a believer or not is Albert Einstein. Best known for being a pioneer in physics, he was born into a secular Jewish family. As an adult, he seemed to reject the idea of God, but then he also contradicted himself on a number of occasions. Here are 2 of Einstein's quotes. "I want to know how God created this world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon in the spectrum of this and that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details." But then he also said, "I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it."
I would agree with that for sure. I think, ethics is just kind of an evolved thing we got in order to work together, right?
Atheist?
You don't need God to have morals. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's not like atheists are running around raping and murdering everybody, right?
Agnostic or a man of faith? We'll let you be the judge. Being atheist or being agnostic seem to be closely related, but are so often misunderstood as the same. But in fact, they have clear differences, as we've seen. To understand the differences completely...
Okay, and that's pretty much it for the video. So that is more or less an overview of my beliefs. I think atheists are fucking wrong, okay? If you don't express doubt in statements that you make or say, this is what I believe, if you're making truth claims about like there not being a God, there not being like a heaven, hell, an afterlife, a fucking, devil or whatever, if you're making truth claims like that, you're just wrong. You can't support those claims with anything. And once again, the only evidence you might have is the fact that we don't have any evidence, but the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I think we got it. I think I was clear enough. All right. Anyways, this has been most likely pissing off all the religious and non-religious people out there with Cleary, and I love you guys. Bye-bye.